that second program is also allowed to carry out input-output operation, and the CPU is allocated to third program. So by doing like this, it is possible to achieve concurrent utilization of CPU as well as input-output devices. The main goal of multi-programming operating system was to see that both the CPU and IO devices, they must be kept busy. That was the goal in case of multi-programming operating systems. Okay, we have third class of operating system. Third one is, that is time sharing operating systems. So actually this time sharing operating system, it was developed in late 1970s. Here the concept is like this. It allows first upon multiple users. It is possible to use the same CPU by multiple users. All the users, they can submit their programs. Okay. But in case of time sharing system, as the name itself indicates, here each user program is executed for a small period of time. Okay, assume that there are 10 users and each user has submitted their own program. Okay, so that these programs, they are executed for a small period of time. Say for example, each program may be executed for few milliseconds or few nanoseconds. After execution of first program, immediately second program is taken, and again second program is executed for few milliseconds, next third program, and so on. So like this, each programs, or all these programs, they are executed one by one in turn, in circular fashion. Here what happens is, each of the user will be under the impression that the CPU is dedicated for him or her. All the user programs, they are executed for a small period of time, and these programs are executed in circular fashion. So using this concept, we can provide better response time to all the users. So one of the main goal of time sharing system is to provide fair service and to provide good response time to all of its users. That is the main goal of time sharing systems. So remember, basically time sharing system is multi-user system, and it was developed keeping in mind that every user should get fair service and every user should get good response time. Okay, here in time sharing systems, we use two important concepts called time slice and round robin scheduling. So actually, time slice means it is the time for which each user program is allowed to execute. As I told, each program, it is executed only for a specific period of time. That program may or may not complete. It is executed only for few milliseconds or few nanoseconds of time. In case if it does not complete its execution within the given time, it is suspended and it will be taken for execution in the next cycle. So here time slice means it is the time for which each program can be executed in time sharing system. Or we can define like this: it is a maximum time for which each program is allowed to make use of CPU. Then next we have round robin scheduling. So as the name itself indicates, in case of round robin scheduling, all the programs, they are executed in circular fashion with equal priority. As the name itself indicates, round robin means the programs are executed in circular fashion. I'll give a simple example. Assume that you have three programs, say P1, P2, and P3. Time sharing system, what it does is, first it will execute, say program P1 for 2 milliseconds of time. And after that, P1 is suspended. Then program P2 is again executed for 2 milliseconds of time. Then again, P2 is also suspended. Then the operating system is going to execute program P3 for 2 milliseconds of time. But after completing P1, P2, P3 in first cycle, again program P1 is taken for execution. Then this process is completed till execution of all the programs. By doing so, the advantage is that all the users, they are going to get good response time, and they are going to get fair service, and they will be under the impression that the CPU is dedicated for him or her. This is the main concept of time sharing system. Okay, here we have the concept of time sharing systems. So this diagram, it shows how the time sharing system works. Okay, initially we are going to have a list of programs. It is called as scheduling list. These are the programs which are submitted by different users. So scheduler will execute these programs one by one. It will make use of round robin scheduling. Round robin scheduling means each program is executed with equal priority, and the programs are executed in circular fashion. So scheduler is going to select one of the program, and that selected program will get CPU. So on CPU, the execution of the program is carried out. But for how much time it is executed? It is executed for time slice period of time. Okay, within that time slice, if that program completes the execution, that program is removed from the list. If not, if the program does not complete its execution within the allocated time slice, that program is preempted. Means that program is suspended, and again it is kept back into the list. Like this, the execution goes on for all the programs by using the concept of round robin scheduling and time slice. Okay, here we have the algorithm for this time sharing systems, which will make use of time slicing concept. Okay, just I'll go through these steps. Try to understand. They are very simple. The operating system, first what it does is, it is going to select the first program. Assume that this program is P. Okay, and this program, it is removed from the scheduling list. You have a scheduling list, that is, there we have list of programs. The scheduler is going to select first program, and the selected program is now removed from the scheduling list, and it is taken for execution. Okay, after selecting the first program, the operating system is going to load the value of time slice into the interval timer. Students, please remember that time slice is indicated by using symbol delta. Delta means it is the time slice. So now we have selected the program P, that is first program. This program is supposed to be executed for delta amount of time. That's why the value of delta, that is time slice value, it is stored in timers. Then the execution of the program P is started on CPU. We load the value of delta in the timer. Then after that, we start the execution of the program P on CPU. Okay, in case if that program P requests for IO operation, assume that you have given 2 milliseconds of time for each of the program. Within that 2 milliseconds of time, if the program P requests for input-output device, that time again we'll go back to the step 1, and we choose the second program or another program from the scheduling list for execution. And when the timer interrupt occurs, okay, we have loaded delta value in the timer, and if the delta amount of time is completed, then we are going to preempt P. We are going to suspend execution of that selected program P, and it is added at the end of the scheduling list. And again, we are going to repeat the steps starting from 1 to 5. Students, the concept is very simple. First, we select the program P from the scheduling list. Then we load the value of delta into the timer. Then we start execution of the program P on the CPU. Suppose if that program P requires input-output operation, we go back to step 1, and we choose the next program for execution. When the timer interrupt occurs, it indicates that the time slice period is over for that program. We preempt that program, means we suspend that program and we add that program at the end of the scheduling list. This process is repeated till completion of all the programs. I hope the concept is clear. Okay. Okay, next we are going to discuss about the two important concepts, that is response time and efficiency. Okay, before that, I would like to tell you that delta, what is delta here? Delta is called as time slice, and the sigma, we use one more symbol here, that is sigma. The sigma indicates context switching time. Students, we have two important parameters. One is delta. Delta is the time slice, and sigma is called as context switching time in case of time sharing systems. Okay, let us try to understand what is this delta and sigma. I think you have understood what is time slice delta. So actually this sigma is context switching time. So whenever you want to switch from one program to other program, the CPU requires some time to remove that program and to store status of new program. The time we call it as context switching time. The context switching time is the time required to suspend execution of current program and to load the status of next program for execution. That time interval we call it as sigma. Okay, assume that you have delta equal to 5 milliseconds and the sigma equal to 1 millisecond. Okay, then to switch from one program to other program, we require how much time? It is delta plus sigma. 5 milliseconds it is required for execution of the program, and 1 millisecond time we require to switch from one program to the other program. Okay, then the response time, which is denoted as RT, can be calculated for nth program as RT equal to, that is response time equal to n into delta plus sigma. Means after n into delta plus sigma amount of time, the nth program is going to get a response from the CPU. Say for example, you assume that your third program, okay, assume that you have P1, P2, P3. So P3 will be getting a response from the CPU after 3 into delta plus sigma amount of time. Okay, so remember, response time can be calculated as n into bracket delta plus sigma. Then next we have efficiency. The efficiency of the CPU or efficiency of the operating system can be calculated as delta divided by delta plus sigma. So actually efficiency, it depends on both the factors, delta as well as sigma. So that the equation for computing efficiency is delta divided by delta plus sigma. Okay, I hope you have understood what is delta, what is sigma, what is response time, and what is efficiency. Okay, efficiency in the sense how better we can use CPU. Here efficiency is with respect to the CPU. Okay. Okay, here we are going to discuss about the influence of this delta on the response time. Okay, we discuss about how exactly this delta makes difference. Okay, I'll give an example. Okay, assume that students, you have totally 4 hours in a day. In each hour, you have to learn one subject. Okay, so after completing first hour, no doubt you require some time to switch from first subject to second subject. Okay, that we call it as switching time or context switching time. That 1 hour is like delta, right? 1 hour is like delta, and assume that you require 5 minutes of time to switch from one subject to other subject. Okay, what you will be doing this switching time? What you will be doing during this switching time? You have to close the notes of first chapter or first subject. You have to open the notes of second subject. Then you'll be prepared for learning the second subject. Okay. Okay, what happens if we take each subject for only 30 minutes? Assume that for switching you require 5 minutes. For switching you require 5 minutes. And if every subject is taught for half an hour, what will happen? Can you think? So you'll get opportunity to learn each subject in every half an hour. Okay, that delta is like productive time. But what about the switching time? That switching time we can't change. It will remain same. No doubt, whatever the period you have, maybe 1 hour or 30 minutes, to switch from one subject to other subject, you require same amount of time. Okay. Okay, now if I make each subject for 5 minutes, then what will happen? No doubt, for every 5 minutes you will get opportunity to learn new subject, but after each subject you have to spend how much time for context switching? 5 minutes, right? So now you can think delta, it is the productive time for which the CPU is allocated for a program, and sigma is like non-productive time, which is used for context switching. To switch from one program to other program, the CPU has to spend some time. That time we call it as context switching time. Okay, what happens if delta is very small? If delta is very small, what will happen? What about response time? Can you think? Anyone? If delta is very small, what about the response time? The response time will be very fast, right? If delta is small, remember sigma you can't change, right? If delta is small, every program is getting CPU attention very fast. Okay, so that we can say we get good response time. Okay, if delta is small, what about the efficiency? Efficiency of CPU. The efficiency of CPU reduces if delta is small, because most of the time will be spent in context switching only. Say for example, if subject is taught only for 5 minutes, what happens is much of the time will be spent for switching from one subject to other subject. No doubt, response time is fast, means you are getting opportunity to learn from one subject to other subject very fast. But however, the unproductive time will increase and the productive time will decrease. Here delta is like the productive time and sigma is like unproductive time. But no doubt we have to spend some time for switching from one program to other program. Delta can be varied, but sigma is going to remain constant. Here we discuss the same thing, that is influence of delta on response time. If delta is very small, the CPU spends more time in context switching, but it provides good response time because every program is going to get attention from CPU very fast, and it leads to lower CPU efficiency. The efficiency of the CPU reduces because much of the time is spent in context switching rather than executing the program. Similarly, if delta is large, in that case, most of the user programs, they may complete their execution well within the delta amount of time. If I increase delta, say instead of 2 milliseconds, if I make it 20 milliseconds, what may happen is within that 20 millisecond of time, the program may complete its execution. So most of the programs, they may release the CPU well before the delta amount of time. Okay. So please try to understand the influence of delta. So if delta is small, CPU spends more time in context switching. We get good response time, but it leads to lower CPU efficiency. If delta is large, most of the user programs, they may complete their execution within delta amount of time, and they may release the CPU before delta seconds. Okay. Okay, this is about influence of delta in case of time sharing systems. Then next, we have the memory management in time sharing systems. So this is one of the very important concepts we use in time sharing systems. We called it as swapping. Swapping is one of the important technique used in time sharing systems. Students, please try to understand we are going to have a limited amount of primary memory, and we will have large amount of secondary storage. So if you consider RAM, it will be hardly 4 GB or 8 GB. But suppose if you consider the hard disk, the size of the hard disk will be maybe about 500 GB, or even it may be about 1 terabytes nowadays. Okay. As the size of the main memory is limited, in time sharing systems, to allow execution of more number of programs, they used or they introduced a new concept called swapping. So actually swapping is the technique in which the inactive programs, they are removed from memory and they are copied onto the disk. Students, try to understand. Swapping, it is a technique in which the inactive programs from the memory, they are removed from the main memory. The inactive programs, they are removed from the main memory and they are kept on the hard disk. This concept we call it as swapping. Okay. So here again we get two important terms. They are called swap out and swap in. The process of copying inactive programs from main memory to the disk is called as swap out, and the process of copying the programs from disk to main memory is called as swap in. The process of copying a program or inactive program from main memory to the disk, it is called as swap out. The opposite operation, the process of copying a program from disk to the main memory, we call it as swap in operation. I think probably you might have seen while installing the Unix operating system or Linux operating system, you have to make disk partitions. You have to reserve some space for this swapping operation. That area we call it as swap area. Okay. So can you think what are active programs and which are inactive programs? Can you think? Here we have the memory. Okay. Inactive programs, they are copied from memory to the programs when their execution is required, they are copied from disk to main memory. That we call it as swap in operation. But can anyone answer what are active programs and what are inactive programs in this context? Anyone? Can you think? Which can be called as active programs and which can be called as inactive programs in this context? Anyone? Okay, no problem. Please try to understand.
Sir, actively.
Okay.
Hello?
Okay, let me answer. No problem. The programs which are using CPU, they are called as active programs. The programs which are not using CPU, which are using IO devices, or which are performing input-output operations, they are called as inactive programs. Here the concept is like this. First we load all the programs submitted by the users. The programs which become inactive, means which are carrying out say input-output operations, or which are not active, they can be copied onto the disk. On the other hand, when those programs become active, when they are when they need to be executed, that time they are copied from disk to main memory. Okay, so at any moment of time, in case of time sharing systems, you are going to find active programs. You are going to find programs being swapped out and the programs being swapped into the memory. Here, if you look at the diagram, same thing is shown. Here we have programs which are being swapped out. Here we have programs which are under execution, and we have programs which are being swapped in. These programs, they are programs being swapped out. These are the programs under execution, and these are the programs which are being swapped in. Okay. So this entire concept, whatever we have discussed in the memory management, it is called as swapping. Okay. Just I'll repeat the concept once again. Mainly, the swapping technique is used to allow execution of more programs and more number of users. In case of swapping, what we do is we copy the inactive programs from main memory to the hard disk. The process of copying programs from main memory to the disk, it is called as swap out. And the process of copying the program from disk to the main memory is called as swap in. So at any moment of time in the time sharing system, we find active programs, we find the programs which are being swapped out, and the programs which are being swapped in. Okay, students, this is all about time sharing systems. So in the time sharing systems, you have to remember okay. So in the time sharing system, you have to remember these two techniques: round robin scheduling, time slice. Then algorithm you must be able to write. Then you remember the equations for response time and efficiency. Then after that, you must be able to spell out the influence of delta on the response time. That is, you must know what happens if delta is small and if delta is large. Then you must have to explain about how memory management is carried out in time sharing systems. Okay. Okay, next I'm going to introduce real-time systems in today's class. Okay. So can you think what is real-time system and what is the goal of real-time system? What do you mean by real-time systems? I think you might have heard about real-time operating systems. Can you tell what exactly it means? Anyone?
It works with present time, sir.
Yes, it should perform operation in real time. Okay. So, as you told students, real-time operating system is one which completes the operation well within the deadline time. The ultimate goal of real-time operating system is to meet the deadline time. Okay. I'll give an example. Assume that you have a weather broadcasting station. You have a weather broadcasting station. There will be a satellite which will be sending some information in terms of samples. Okay. On the earth, there exists a computing system. There exists a computer which collects these samples and analyzes the samples. Okay. Assume that the satellite is going to send 1,000 samples in 1 second. Understand? The satellite is sending how many samples? 1,000 samples in 1 second. and your computer, it is supposed to receive the sample and it should process that sample. Now, can you tell me how much time can be given for processing of each sample? Can you think? The computer has to process each sample in how much time? I will repeat once again. Assume that you have a satellite. That satellite is going to send 1,000 samples in 1 second, and these samples, they are to be processed by the computer which is kept on the earth. Okay. Now, can you think how much time the computer gets to process each of the sample? That is the question. How much time it needs? Anyone?
1 millisecond.
Yes, very good. So to process each sample, the computer gets how much time? 1 millisecond. Here, the idea is that whatever the computer or whatever the operating system you are going to use, that must process the sample within 1 millisecond of time. Okay, that we call it as deadline time. There we must have to use real-time system. Okay, can you tell what happens if instead of 1 millisecond, if the computer takes 2 milliseconds? Can you think?
Data will be lost.
Yes, no doubt we get loss of data. We won't get complete information for processing purpose. Okay, so in such situations, we supposed to use real-time operating systems. Okay, I think you have understood the concept. The concept is the real-time operating system always it will try to meet the deadline time. Okay, the goal is to execute any of the application, any of the program or any of the process well within the deadline time. Okay, here we have two types of real-time systems. So actually for cost effectiveness, they developed two kinds of real-time systems. One is called as hard real-time system and second one is called as soft real-time system. We have two types of real-time systems, hard real-time system and soft real-time system. A hard real-time system is one, it will complete execution of the process well within the deadline time under all the conditions. Please try to understand. Hard real-time system is one which completes execution of the program well within the deadline time under all the conditions. It will guarantee that that program is going to complete well within the deadline time. So failure to meet the deadline time in hard real-time systems, it causes failure of entire system. I hope you are understanding. A hard real-time system is one which executes any of the application well within the deadline time under all the conditions. It will provide that guarantee. Okay. In case if the program is not executed within the deadline time in the hard real-time system, it will cause failure of entire application or entire system. Okay. Okay, on the other hand, we have a soft real-time system. Soft real-time system is one which makes best effort to meet the deadline time. It won't guarantee that that program will be executed well within the deadline time. But however, the soft real-time system, it makes best effort to meet the deadline time. And failure to meet the deadline time in the soft real-time system, it will cause reduction in performance of the system. It won't damage the system, however, it will reduce the performance of the system. Hence, depending on application, we can decide whether we have to go for hard real-time system or soft real-time system, where it is essential to complete the application well within the deadline time. We must have to use hard real-time system, but where it can be managed, there we can make use of soft real-time system. Okay, can you give some example for hard real-time system application and soft real-time application. Can you give students? Okay, assume that you have developed a fire protection system. Assume that you have developed a fire protection system to prevent the fire accident in industry or at some location. There, what type of operating system can be used? Whether it should be hard real-time system or soft real-time system.
Hard.
We must have to go for hard real-time system, because what happens if it fails? It leads to loss of lives. Okay, that's why there we must have to go for hard real-time system. Okay, assume that I think you have seen automatic belling system, like we have bell after each subject. After each subject, we are going to get the bell, right? So there we have automated system. There, can you think whether we can use soft real-time system or hard real-time system? Okay, assume that you have a timetable. So after each hour, you should get a ringing of the bell. In that case, whether we can go for hard real-time system or soft real-time system. We can go for soft real-time system. It won't make much difference. If there is a difference of 1 or 2 minutes in switching from one subject to other subject according to the timetable, it won't make much difference, isn't it? There we can make use of soft real-time systems. Okay. So real-time system is one whose goal is to execute the programs well within the deadline time. Okay. Okay, this is all about time sharing systems and real-time systems. I'll continue the real-time system application in the next class. We'll discuss in more detail about the real-time systems.